Hello lovely people, welcome back to my channel. It's Canisha. If you're new around here, my name is Canisha and welcome to the family. If you'd like to join me on my journey as I go through career, personal development and just general life, feel free to hit the subscribe button below and yeah, let's jump straight into today's video. So my last video on Virtual Assessment Centre has really grown dramatically over the last 5-6 months, and I just thought it would make sense to do a more in-depth video following that last one, just going more into detail about what to do during the assessment centre, as my last one was more of a how to prepare, what to have in mind, your setup, etc. If you've not watched my first video on this, go ahead and click, I think I put it up here, and you can go ahead and watch it. Hopefully there's some things you can take away from it, but the first thing that I'm going to be talking about in regards to acing that virtual assessment centre is your setup. So I touched on this in my last video, but your setup is so key to you feeling comfortable, and when you feel comfortable, you tend to perform your best. Now what you want to do is make sure you set up in a place that has minimal disruptions. So you want to make sure your friends, family, flatmates, whoever you're living with knows not to disrupt you during your virtual assessment, as it might knock you off your flow or just be a little bit unprofessional. So make sure you have a room that will be undisrupted. You have a space, so whether that's a desk, a table, that you have space to write on, you've got space for your laptop and your setup, even a lighting setup, so maybe a ring light. You want to make sure that's there and ready for you. And the other thing that you want to make sure you do, which is on the more technical side, is have the right links for the assessment centre, make sure you've got the right times, make sure you have the software that they're going to be using for this. So some companies might not use Zoom, Google Meets or Teams, so make sure that whatever link or software that they want you to use is already downloaded on your laptop and you're good to go. Or maybe you might need an update, who knows. Just make sure your laptop's ready, the software's ready and the links work through. The next thing you want to make sure you do is to arrive early to this assessment centre. So like you would have done in a real place, you want to turn up at least 5-10 minutes early. So be in the room where the link is happening if they allow you to enter, or at least have the software ready, just so that you'll be the first one in the room and already to an assessor that gives them a really good first impression of you. Number 2, preparation is key. Before coming into this assessment centre, you want to make sure that you have done your research into the company. So go onto their website, look at their mission statement, look at what their core values are, read their blog posts if they have any of those. These just really gives you an indicator as to what kind of attributes or things they're looking for in candidates, and they want to mirror what they do as a company and the things that they hold dear to them within their candidates. So make sure you've researched, and by looking at the blog post, it puts you in a really good position to sort of have a bit of like a light conversation around some of the company updates that may be taking place, or they might ask you a question about the market and maybe someone wrote a piece about the market in a recent blog post. It just really gives you that extra edge and comfortableness to talk about the company and to make sure that they fit what your own values are, as well as you being a great fit for their values. The next thing you want to make sure that you're doing is asking lots of questions. Like, to me, questions signal that you have curiosity, you're keen to learn more, and often you get to discover for your own benefit, like if this is a company that you want to work with, or if you're really understanding what the task is that they've asked from you. So ask as many questions throughout the whole process, and that can really help you to stand out and to really make sure you're understanding what is being asked for you in order for you to deliver. So to put this all into context on what you can expect from your assessment centre, I'm going to tell you about an assessment centre that I did late last year, and this was with a financial services company based in London and New York. And so ahead of time, before my assessment centre, my assessor sent me an email basically telling me what time it was going to be, sent me the links, and also what I could expect on the day. So overall, this assessment centre was going to be 3 hours long. It was 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. and I'm just going to read this off my laptop so I get the details correct. But essentially, it would start off with a group prioritization task and a presentation of the outcome from the exercise. Then we'd go into listening to a pre-recorded call and writing up a short report. We'd then go on to formulate a response to a client email. a lead generation task, then a 30-minute one-to-one interview with the head of a certain department, and then finally a mock phone call between 5 to 10 minutes with basically someone who's already in the role, kind of role playing what they'd be like as a client and how you'd respond. So this all took place over the course of 3 hours, and when I say it was very smooth flowing, like we started off with one thing and just quickly led to the next thing. I think we only had one break in between all of that, so it was very full on, very intense, but at the same time they did give me an appropriate amount of time between each tasks. And like with the real life assessment center, there were other people participating as well. So in my cohort there were 3 other participants, and we all had a chance to introduce ourselves at the very beginning, and then straight after that we got left in a room. So our assessor told us about the prioritization task and then said that she was not going to be in the call, and I think she was not, I don't think she was in the call, or if she was, she would have muted herself and removed her video but was able to watch us. Yeah, that was how it went. So she was still there, but we couldn't hear her, any of that. And this was interesting because unlike with the real assessment center, you might have had a conversation with these people that you don't know before, a little bit of like, you know, that friendly conversation. We didn't get to have that. We literally jumped straight into this task, and already you can tell people are trying to, you know, put themselves in the best light and to really stand out. And so my advice in that situation in terms of standing out, and what I did myself, was I took on the role of timekeeper. So I kept an eye on the clock, I kept rereading the what was being asked of us, and really tried to make sure different people in the group were being heard. So if someone said something but, you know, the other members didn't pick up on it, I'd really call on that person again, like, oh, what was that thing that you said that sounded really interesting, just to, you know, give them an opportunity to speak and to show that I was paying attention to the different members of the group. And at the same time I was also offering my own information. And so one of the things people don't realise is, especially virtually, you have such a big advantage in terms of having the opportunity to Google or to research. So one of our tasks, one of the elements in the prioritization task was to do with different time zones for clients. So thinking of Hong Kong clients, if they're in that time zone and you want to speak to a New York client, like, how would you prioritize these? So I was able to go on Google and just double check what is the time difference between here in Hong Kong versus here in New York, and that really helped to, you know, put into priority the different tasks. And that was an information that I was able to contribute to the team that I remember. But yeah, essentially that's what you want to make sure you're doing in your assessment center, at least for that first example of like a prioritization task. Assume a role, be a timekeeper, or just really make sure people are being listened and heard during, you know, the whole call. Another thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing throughout the whole assessment center is to smile and engage with the call. So that's from the beginning of, you know, introducing yourself all the way throughout the task. Because people don't have the opportunity to read your body language, or for you to have the little conversations, maybe go and get some water or coffee, or even a lunch, you know, interaction, they have to base off what they can see of you in that screen. So your best asset is to be friendly, to smile, and to just engage with the call. So like I mentioned earlier with people's responses and answers, you just want to show that you're listening and you're paying attention to what is being said. Now with all these tasks, I've listed them on the side in case you might have forgotten what some of them were. They do give you an appropriate amount of time to work through them. So I remember in some tasks I would be assigned maybe 25 minutes to answer, you know, to provide like a client response email. And rather than it be a case where they're in the room saying, oh, you know, you've got 5 minutes to go, you've got 2 minutes to go, they really want to assess your time management as well. So what you want to make sure you're doing is keeping an eye out on the time and then making sure you're coming back into the room, so into the meeting room, at the right time and not get too carried away. So that's a reassurance for you, is that you don't have to rush it, but you do get given an appropriate amount of time that you manage. So make sure you're keeping an eye on that and coming back at the right time. What I would also advise you to do, and especially in your own benefit, is if you have access to 2 screens, so the computer or the laptop that you're using to make the video call, and then you have another separate screen with notes, make use of that. Obviously don't be obvious and, you know, I'm in like a video interview right now, and then I'm checking like this to look at my notes, reading, come back to the answer like this. Don't do that. But what you want to make sure you have is the second screen in a position that is not too obvious. So maybe like next to the the camera that's picking you up for the meeting, and then every so often you can just flick back, read a quick line, and that might help you as you answer some questions, or in between tasks when you're waiting to be told the next thing. You can just refresh your knowledge on the notes that you'd made prior to the call and any key things that might help you in the next stage. For my last two tasks, so the one-to-one interview with the head of the team or the head of research, and then the mock call, the best things that you can do for these ones is to be yourself. Now, firstly, you want to remember that they asked you to come to this assessment centre because they like you. You've done well in the first step of the interview. So already trust in that you yourself are good enough, and then just continue to be yourself in that. So build a rapport with your interviewer where possible. You want to make sure that you appear confident, you take your time with your answers, but also just trust that you have done the adequate amount of research required to ace it. And when it comes to the mock phone calls, what I did to prepare for that was to actually research online to see other examples of mock phone calls with clients, because the resources are out there. There's people that have done some excellent work in making content that is digestible, that teaches you something. So definitely do your research prior to this and look online, because sometimes there tends to be a bit of a formula as to how they expect you to answer. So for this example of it being like a mock one-to-one call with a potential client or potential investor, there was a formula that they were kind of looking for, and from what I remember, it was, you know, to introduce yourself, introduce the company, but also don't assume that they know. So you ask them if they've heard of the company. If they haven't, then explain what they are. Really listen to what they're saying, but also have some preset questions that you're ready to dive in with this, you know, the mock client. So understanding what the company is, what the problems are, what are their needs, what are they currently using at the moment, what's not working, what could they be looking for, what keeps them up at night. Like, you want to have a set of questions, whether it's 5 questions, 10 questions, that you know you can go through in this mock call, but also don't be rigid on this. You want to make sure you are flexible and fluid to respond to the answers that the person's giving you on the other side of the phone call, you know, because it shows that's what a true conversation is like. Like, we all go into conversations with maybe some questions we have, but you don't just do it like an interview where you just like bam, bam, bam. If someone gives you a new insight of information, go with that, ask a question that leads from that, and then later come back to your preset questions. So I highly recommend that you do have some questions prepared for a mock call, to sort of like a typical sales thing, or like a typical wanting to get to know more information about a potential client. Have these and know that they most likely are on the internet already, so you just have to look. The last thing that I want to say in order for you to ace your virtual assessment centre is to thank everybody involved. So the person who organised the whole assessment centre, just make sure you do like a round of thanks in an email, just to say thank you for your time, you know, whatever you want to add into that email. But it just really goes to show that you've taken that extra step to make yourself, you know, have a good impression, and also be appreciative of being selected for the process, and hoping that, you know, you stay in their minds. It's also just a really nice thing to do. Like, I'm sure people like to receive thank you emails, so definitely do that, because I think sometimes that can get forgotten in just all the preparation, all the adrenaline and the hype of doing the assessment centre. So yeah, that could really help you to stick out. Now, I hope you found these tips and advice really useful. I wish you all the best in your upcoming assessment centre. I know you're going to smash it. And if you have any tips or any things that really helped you in yours, comment below, because it can really help somebody else who is preparing for an assessment centre. But yeah, thank you so much for watching the video.